I'm back. I know, it's been a while. I missed you guys. I hope you missed me. This would be really awkward if I was the only one missing you. Anyway, welcome to Van's weekly crash out session. The time has come where I am finally moving away from Stranger Things, and if you can't tell by what the title is up here, we are discussing something completely different today. So for those who are not new here, welcome back, and for those who are new, welcome. My name is Van, and originally I was supposed to start a book reviewing channel, but then Byler consumed my life, and now we are here. And today we are going to be taking a healthy, logical separation from our frankly toxic relationship with Stranger Things and the Duffer Brothers. And the topic of today is going to be Hannigram. That's right, folks, the very murder husbands themselves. And it was also the ship that won the poll on my Patreon. So Hannigram is a ship that I do actually have a similar personal connection to. Not quite as hardcore as Byler, but I did binge the TV show, and I did watch Silence of the Lambs, and I did watch Hugh Dancy in Ella Enchanted. No one told me that this man was British. Why did I have to find that out myself? And I'm also a major Hugh Dancy fan, and part of the reason why this video just took me so long to make is because I was putting in a similar amount of effort into this video as I was with my very first Byler video, where I was literally analyzing their relationship spanning across seasons. This is a 3-season show, guys. I don't know if you're aware. And I was also rewatching some of it too to make sure that the stuff that I was mentioning was actually factual, that it did actually happen, because unlike some people, I do my research. So, what we have on the agenda today, I feel like I'm giving you a job interview. I look like it. Anyway, we are first going to be exploring a bit of the history behind Hannigram as it spans across the different versions of source material, as well as analyzing what exactly the term being canon implies. And then we will go into a season-by-season analysis of evidence that their relationship is in fact not platonic. And then we're going to do a little bit of information on the potential of season 4 and some closing statements. Are you guys excited? Are you excited to hear me talk about something that is not Stranger Things related? Don't worry, it'll still very much have the same vibe. I'm still very, very much invested. So, are you ready? You look great today. Hold my hand. Also, before we delve into this ship as well, I also just want to give you a brief content warning. Those of you who are watching this, I'm sure you're already familiar with Hannigram to at least some extent, but just in case you're not, Hannigram and the show Hannibal, even the books and the movies, they all feature many depictions of cannibalism and extremely unhealthy relationships, manipulation, and murder, among other things. So please, if any of that does not sit well with you, click off. I'm sure I'll see you in another one of my videos, or there may be another one that is more suited to you right now. So please take care of yourself first. When it comes to dissecting one of the most popular ships in television history, it is crucial to ask one specific question. What does being canon mean? Honestly, that definition is a little difficult to explain. I've tried to explain it to my mom multiple times. She does not understand fandom culture. But essentially, being canon, specifically in a relationship, because that is what it most frequently is referring to. Being canon means that the relationship is explicitly proven in some form in the medium that it exists in. That's a lot of words. Let me simplify it. So what do I mean by that? A good example of a ship being canon is Emily and Allison from Pretty Little Liars, specifically the TV show, or also Joyce and Hopper from Stranger Things. Those relationships are canon because they have explicitly made the shift from a platonic relationship into a romantic relationship, and it's either been verbally discussed or explicitly shown to have occurred. But often when it comes to LGBTQ relationships, it does tend to become a little bit muddier. And so this is where our media literacy skills do need to come in. We do need them. We need them still. which, as I've said before, is something that the vast audience has slowly been losing over time. It's why we frequently get lots of current media that is very in your face. It's very, even down to the dialogue, like we've talked about before. It's very tell, don't show. And that's not always a good thing. Because Hannigram is canon, technically, but only in the TV show. So we'll go a little bit more in depth on that as we continue. But like, just for reference, just know that it is a ship that has been confirmed to be canon to an extent by the creator of the TV show. However, there is no on-screen kiss. There is no confession of love, per se. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Hannigram is a ship name that is in reference to the romantic relationship between Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter, most popularly in the Hannibal NBC show created by Bryan Fuller. It draws upon heavy inspiration from the Thomas Harris books, but it is very notably not a one-to-one reflection of those books. Bryan Fuller took lots of creative liberties with it. And that, combined with the sheer chemistry between Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy, kind of got us to where we are today with the husbands. And it is also important to note that even on the wiki page, Hannigram is only considered to be canon in the TV series. And why might that be? Well, because there are so many different mediums and iterations of the story of Hannibal, such as like the acclaimed Silence of the Lambs movie and The Red Dragon, like among others. Before we delve into that TV show, I did want to do a quick briefing over their relationship in those other source materials to kind of give you a little bit of a context for how their relationship was viewed prior to the introduction of this TV show. Because even then, a lot of people were speculating that there were signs of queer coding in at least Hannibal's character. I admittedly have actually not read the books. I know, oh my god, kill me now. No, I want to. I haven't gotten around to it yet. So I don't want to say too much on them, because I also can't really read 4 books in the span of a week in order to get this done for you guys, even though I wish that I could. But in the original series that was written by Mr. Harris, Hannibal and Will were characterized for having a very adversarial relationship. It was very much fueled with trauma and manipulation and deep-rooted scars, which kind of the same in the TV show. However, there is no canon romantic relationship between the two of them. There is, however, a romantic relationship between Hannibal and Clarice Starling, who I believe actually runs away with Hannibal at the end of this story. And that relationship did actually cause a lot of controversy, because some viewers did see their relationship as being massively inappropriate, while others were also enraged by the fact that the movie adaptations did not end in the same. They were not truthful adaptations. They didn't end the same way that the books did, which that happens pretty frequently. I mean, even the book The Lawn Walk by Stephen King, the movie that came out last year, it did have a different ending than the book did, and some people liked it, some people didn't. It's just that show business, baby, okay? But the internet is full of misinformation, so I won't stem too far into the books beyond that, but I will say that from the looks of it in the books, Hannibal and Will very much had a hero and villain dynamic. What I was reading kind of gave me like an Elle and Light dynamic for any Death Note fans out there, but some people do also argue that there were signs of queer coding in Hannibal's character in the books as well. Maybe if I finally get around to reading the books, I will do the book reviewing title some justice and will actually review them for you. But on to the movies. So there were technically 2 different films that adapted the same story. There was Manhunter in 1986 and The Red Dragon in 2002, but both of those films depicted the same tale of Will Graham meeting Hannibal Lecter and becoming the one who eventually locks him up, which is where we pick up the story in The Silence of the Lambs. But before the events of these films, Will was shown to be an FBI profiler who was seeking out Hannibal Lecter for his psychiatric expertise because he was trying to track down serial killers. But, of course, he does not realize until it's too late that the man that he's trying to hunt down is the man that he's talking to and trusts. Will eventually realizes the truth, and in a tussle, Hannibal winds up stabbing him with a knife. And though he was critically injured, Will was able to capture Lecter and eventually place him into custody. And then I believe that years later, Will does eventually come back to Hannibal Lecter because he's now dealing with Francis Dolarhyde, a name that fans of the show will likely recognize. And despite his sheer hatred for the man, he does go back to consult with him. But Dr. Lecter winds up secretly communicating with Dolarhyde and tries to get him to kill Will's new family. But thankfully, he does not succeed, even though by the end of it, Will is far too traumatized. And though he does manage to bring Dolarhyde to justice, he winds up leaving the FBI permanently because the trauma was just too much for him. And do I blame him? A lot of people have also pointed out some signs of queer coding in the relationship depiction in both films, and I did manage to find at least 2 clips that I do agree are a little suspicious. Because in Manhunter, we have this scene that I believe it comes near the end of the film, but it features Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter having a conversation while Lecter is in prison. And we open up with Hannibal congratulating him on his job with Freddie Lowndes, and we see that Will is clearly framed in the dark. He's sitting on a lounge, and when we cut to Hannibal, we see that he is laying in a bright room with his feet propped up on the wall. It's a very funny picture, honestly, because he looks so at ease. And Hannibal even calls him a cunning boy. And this scene is very much giving me the same vibe as, like, a girl having a late night call with her boyfriend in high school, especially with the way that they're sitting. His feet are like, his demeanor is so much like of a high school girl kicking her feet and like twirling her hair. He seems very relaxed and is having fun talking to Will. And at one point, Will himself even shifts and seems to get more comfortable when he hooks a leg over the side of the chair. Like, I'm not kidding, this happens. I'll link the scene. Anyway, moving on to Red Dragon. This is a scene where it's primarily the dialogue that I find interesting, but it's the scene where Will figures out that Hannibal Lecter is the Chesapeake Ripper, and while they're discussing Will's newfound revelation of the killer being a cannibal, Hannibal mentions how fascinating his empathy is and how he'd like to get Will on his couch.
I'm not psychic.
No. This is different. More akin to artistic imagination. You're able to assume the emotional point of view of other people, even those that might scare or sicken you. It's a troubling gift, I should think. How I'd love to get you on my couch.
I know he's clearly referring to therapy, but does that not sound just a little bit like an innuendo? I'm sorry. I'm just telling you what I see. I'm just telling you what I hear. But especially with the way that he says it. And then right before Hannibal tries to go in for the kill, he tells Will, "I think I'll eat your heart."
I think I'll eat your heart.
Okay, which is an interesting thing to say, especially because you would think that he would want to eat his brain due to his fascination with Will's intellect and his empathy. And like, to go for the heart just seems inherently romantic because, like, of course, the heart has forever been symbolic with love. Moving on to Silence of the Lambs. This film was critically acclaimed, and it primarily centers around Clarice Starling and her relationship with Hannibal Lecter, and Will Graham is only mentioned once in the film by Jack Crawford, who mentions him as being the man who managed to put Lecter behind bars, but he is no longer a part of the FBI anymore. Clarice Starling is the one who becomes Hannibal Lecter's newfound source of fascination in Will Graham's place, essentially. And then for Hannibal and Hannibal Rising, I'm pretty sure that Will Graham doesn't appear in those films because I think they actually focus on Hannibal's origin story and then he's just not in the other film. So feel free to correct me on any of those details. But like I said, I'm most familiar with the NBC show because that is the one that I had watched and it's the only one that I've seen everything of apart from Silence of the Lambs. And granted, I did go into the show kind of blind. I did not know that Hannigram was canon until I watched the show. And then I understood. I saw clearly. My crops were watered. My skin was clear. So, after hearing that, I'm sure some of you are wondering,
Van, what exactly is the appeal of this ship? It sounds a little scary.
it does sound a little scary with just what's on the tin. A secret serial killer falls in love with his profiler pursuer. Because to an extent, what happens with Will and Hannibal is also what happens with Hannibal and Clarice. To an extent, it's not the same, but it is, they're kind of mirrored a little bit. And like I said, it does sound very Death Note. It reminds me a lot of Death Note with these two people who have very opposing views of what justice is. But at the end of the day, they do understand each other, and they do kind of want the same thing. For the Death Note fans, do you want me to do an Ellen Light video? I can do it if you want. If you want, just say the word. Just say the word, and I will do it. I have a lot of anime ships that I could talk for a long time about. So, for starters, it's important to know that fans had been shipping this pairing from as early as like the first episode of the show. And for good reason. I'll discuss it in a second. But despite this, a lot of people didn't really suspect that it was going to go anywhere because it never did in the other source material. Especially since we knew that it was based off of the book, chances are nothing's going to happen. However, that disbelief did soon turn into hope because the longer that the show went on, the more we started to shift out of the heavy symbolism and more into like explicitly being shown, not into you'll understand what I mean. You'll get it when you're older. And also, the more that the cast and Brian Fuller talked openly about it. Like this is something, like you can go on YouTube and just search up like the cast talking about Hannigram. Like the cast was very open about it. Especially Mads Mikkelsen, which for those who don't know, he plays Hannibal. But it's one thing that I do kind of wish that other forms of media would be more willing to do, especially Stranger Things, because you can kind of see the difference here. When you keep it so secretive, it is really hard to trust you and to really know what to expect. But then when you're open and honest about it, it puts a lot more faith in the creator because they're not afraid to talk about it. And I mean, Mads Mikkelsen, like, literally admitted that it was love at first sight for Hannibal, so do with that what you will. It is also important to note that Mads and Hugh did star in another film previously. I think it was, it was like a King Arthur film, I think. But it is actually a pretty common occurrence for their characters from other projects to be shipped together. Like, I think one of the most common ones is Mads' character Nigel from Charlie Countryman and Hugh's character Adam from the movie of the same name, shipping those two together. Like, their chemistry spans so far and wide that even if they're not even in the same movie, they still ship those characters together because their chemistry is so strong. And it is also important to note that their dynamic is very similar to the relationship of Eve and Villanelle from Killing Eve. That's another TV show I can talk about if you want. Which, yeah, is an eventual lesbian couple. There are quite a lot of parallels between the protagonists of that show and Hannibal. Like, mostly due to the very, like, kind of sexual love-hate relationship that occurs. But one of the biggest appeals between the two of these people is that they are the only ones who can fully and completely understand one another. It's a very, like, soulmate sort of thing. They feel like two halves of a whole. A lot of people refer to them as two sides of the same coin. And this is especially true since Will can literally mirror the way that people think. It's a very deep level of intimacy that is also deeply dangerous because, well, we're talking about a cannibal here. But it's also a show that is an absolute playground for people like the Stranger Things fans who love to dissect and pick apart the symbolism and the subtext and analyze things, because a lot of their relationship is is beautifully written through the cinematography and the symbolism and the dialogue and the paintings. Like, rarely ever is it as in your face as, is Hannibal in love with me? If you know, you know. But that's part of what makes it fun, is that it's more than just your average rom-com. Just don't do this at home. So, with all that being said, you're gonna want to take a seat because we're gonna be here for a while. So, season 1.
Like the homoerotic tension between Will and Hannibal is crazy. But no one ever says, like, you guys fuck already? Like, no one ever says, I think Hannibal's interested in... It's never said. Like, even Jack, who you expect would go, what the fuck's going on? I mean, do you want to... What's he want with you? You know what I mean?
Our show opens up by introducing us to our main character, an introverted, awkward adjunct professor at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia by the name of William Graham, but he goes by Will. Yes, this is a little confusing for me, especially because I made so many Byler videos. What is the subject that he teaches, you might ask? Good question. He teaches how to profile serial killers, specifically how to better understand them, which is already heavy foreshadowing for why he isn't in the field, because our inciting incident occurs when Will is approached by Special Agent Jack Crawford, who is played by that one guy from CSI, and he wants Will's assistance in helping him to profile a serial killer that has been recently active in Minnesota. He has been aptly named the Minnesota Shrike. And it is then that we learn that Will is self-proclaimed, I believe, to be on the autism spectrum, which is something that he claims to have been a blockade when it comes to allowing him to pass those exams or qualifications needed to be an active agent on the field, which is why he teaches instead. But despite this, Jack is very insistent on wanting Will to come along and shadow and help him. And we will soon come to learn that Jack Crawford is someone who doesn't know how to take no for an answer. Yeah, especially when it comes to being able to use Will and Will's unique ability to mirror the thinking of serial killers. It's a very toxic relationship between the two of them as well, because at some points it seems like Jack has no regard really for just how much strain he's putting Will through in these situations. And if it helps you to understand better, basically Will has too many mirror neurons. Sorry, that's hard to say. So he can look at a crime scene and he can utilize his empathy in order to understand exactly why the serial killer did what they did and how they did it. For those of you who have seen, like, The Conjuring 2, the opening sequence where Lorraine is literally in the body of the serial killer, it's very similar to that. Will often refers to it as his design or the design of the serial killer. That's what he says. He says, this is my design. This is how the serial killer did this. This is why they did this. And, naturally, having to watch yourself brutally murder innocent people is a lot to go through. And so we see this occur as Will's mental state starts to deteriorate the closer that he gets with each new crime scene with the Minnesota Shrike. Because he starts having vivid nightmares, starts waking up in cold sweats, babe, me too. He sees himself being connected to them, and Jack starts to notice that Will is struggling. And so he speaks with Alana Bloom, who I'm pretty sure was Will's psychiatrist before this. And Alana then recommends that Jack speaks to Hannibal Lecter, who is one of her colleagues, and who is also a fellow psychiatrist, to see if Will is fit enough mentally to continue investigating for the Minnesota Shrike. And thus the ball is set in motion. So the following day, we get to see Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter meet for the first time. And if you watched my Mike Wheeler analysis video, you'd know that I referred to their interaction as being love at first sight. Solely on Hannibal's side, though. Right now, Will just thinks that he's annoying. He's not interested. Not yet. Just wait, we'll get there. Because we quite literally see Hannibal do a double take. He glances at Will, pauses, and then looks back with more intent. And like I said, this is a classic romance trope because what it is implying is that this person's attention is snagging on this other person. Something about them is making them pause. Something about them is making them stop what they're doing and pay attention. And of course, he then speaks to him, calling Will out on his lack of fondness for eye contact. This is something that is important. It is something that will come back later. Will does not like eye contact. He literally wears glasses as a means of avoiding it.
Not fond of eye contact, I am.
Eyes are distracting. You see too much, you don't see enough, and it's hard to focus.
Will doubles down on it, and it's enough to make Hannibal chuckle. And you can literally see the fondness in his expression. He's having fun here. This is a fun interaction for him. He's being really prickly. He's having fun poking at him. Because Will, like a cat first meeting a potential owner, he has little to no interest in Hannibal until Hannibal starts to basically psychoanalyze him, and then he gets really pissed. He lashes out on Hannibal for trying to probe at him. And then Jack basically tells him that he doesn't really have much of a choice in this manner. And in an effort to make amends, Hannibal later on literally brings Will breakfast one morning. Homemade breakfast, no less. And Will is a bit skeptic at first, especially because he's in his goddamn underwear. But they both have breakfast together in a little motel room. And it is very cute. Up until they have the conversation where Hannibal is kind of like, well, God forbid that we become friendly. Like, I know you don't like me, but like, God forbid we become friends. And Will basically tells him that he doesn't find him very interesting, to which Hannibal says, "You will."
Just keep it professional.
Oh, we could socialize like adults. God forbid we become friendly.
I don't find you that interesting.
You will.
Foreshadowing is a literary device. Like, just imagine if Will were a girl. I know. But you see what I mean here? You see why people were shipping them as early as the first episode? What the actual fuck? Later on, Hannibal does end up rubber stamping Will, so basically approving him to continue working on the field, even though Will himself is still a little bit skeptical of this. He doesn't entirely think that this is good for him, and rightfully so. I wouldn't think it would be healthy. I don't think doing that is really healthy for anyone. And we are essentially being taught as early as like the first couple of episodes that their whole relationship right now with this whole psychiatrist-patient thing is it's painting Hannibal as being Will's way out of the dark places that Jack sends him to. And there kind of is a beautiful irony there, because in actuality, the place that is supposed to be full of light is actually just dragging Will deeper and deeper into the dark without his knowledge. And before we continue that as well, I do want to bring up a conversation that Hannibal and Will have like later down the line, because I think it is very important to help to illustrate to you like what Hannibal's thought process is, why he thinks that killing is okay, essentially. So the conversation surrounds Will talking about how it felt to shoot Eldon Stamets, he's someone you meet later, and how it should rightfully feel wrong because killing is wrong. But Hannibal basically tells Will that killing must feel good to God too, because he does it all the time. People die wrongly too, all the time. And are we not created in his image? Like, I'm not saying that Hannibal's a particularly religious man, but it is interesting to see the way that he justifies his actions here in a very religiously painted framework. Especially because he's trying to appeal to Will here as well. Because he already sees the world as having so much cruelty and darkness in it. I mean, he literally discusses a church collapsing on its worshippers. So I suppose in his mind, he's kind of thinking, well, what's a little more? He has that light mindset of, well, let's just clean up the bad people, I guess, and then that's my good deed for the world. I'm cleaning up the world of the scum. And it's also clear from this conversation that Hannibal does, to an extent, have a god complex. He sees himself as being above most other people, even if he pretends not to. And we already know that he views the rude as nothing more than pigs, which is part of how he justifies eating them. It is also why he seems to compare mankind to God and being made in God's image. So while I cannot say that I agree with any of that, I hope that that kind of helps put things in perspective for you, like what his mindset is. Because in his mind, what he is doing is just human nature to him. It's not a question of like, should I stop doing this? Because to him, it's everyone else who is crazy, not him. Does that make sense? So since the Minnesota Shrike's MO seems to be impaling girls on the head of a stag, Will starts to have nightmares and visions, and in those he starts seeing a figure that represents bloodlust as a raven stag. This is also frequently mentioned in fan fiction, but the raven stag is essentially this giant elk that has raven feathers for a coat instead of fur. And that figure does eventually start to blur together with visions of Hannibal himself, and sometimes even takes on the form of like what kind of looks like a go. And the two soon start to spend a whole lot of time together, be it for just investigating or doing therapy. And they soon manage to come to a potential suspect with Garrett Jacob Hobbs. And for those of you who know this show, you already know who I'm talking about, so buckle up. The end of the first episode actually finds the two of them apprehending this man, who Hannibal had, of course, secretly called ahead of time to warn him of their arrival. And when they approach his home, they already find his wife stumbling out and dying on the front steps. And when they get inside, Garrett has his daughter held at knife point. He does wind up slitting her throat, and Will winds up shooting him 9 times. Quite a few too many times, one might say. And right before he dies, as well as trying desperately to save Abigail, Garrett Jacob Hobbs looks him in the eyes and whispers, "See? See?" to Will, implying that he was able to sort of see the same type of bloodlust in Will that he has in himself. Again, foreshadowing is a literary device, and Mr. Fuller likes to use it a lot. This is also the first time that Will has ever killed someone, so he's shaking and dissociating, and it's Hannibal actually who, even though Will told him to stay in the car, it's him who has to step in and stop Abigail, Garrett's daughter, from bleeding out. And so after this traumatic event, Will does start seeing Hannibal regularly as an unofficial therapist, even though Hannibal would like to just refer to them as they're having talks. That's not really official. And Hannibal does try to somewhat comfort Will over his guilt with Abigail and killing her father, quite literally referring to both of them as her surrogate fathers. Quite the, platonic thing to say to your new best buddy, huh? And Hannibal does also connect it to some of Will's own familial trauma, which he doesn't seem too comfy talking about. And we get a couple of other interesting developments between the two of them because as their relationship continues to develop, we get the introduction of a new elusive serial killer. Well, kind of like an old new serial killer, but the Chesapeake Ripper. And yes, ding ding, Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper. Gold star for you. But no one knows that. Only we know that.
It was real to me.
And like, you know, the whole like keep your friends close but your enemies closer saying, that's Hannibal. Because the Ripper's main MO is cannibalizing part of the victims, which is so
fun.
And it's during one of their conversations that we realize that Hannibal has like a thing. He can smell really well. He's got a good nose.
Did you just smell me?
Difficult to avoid.
And he even smells Will, which Will rightfully calls him out for. So that does come in. That is important to know for later. I didn't just bring that up for fun, though it is a fun fact. There you go. And so while they are both acting as adoptive fathers of Abigail, who is still like greatly recovering from her trauma, Will, Hannibal, and Jack start to cross paths with the great Freddie Lowndes, who is as beautiful as she is infuriating. And Freddie Lowndes is a freelance journalist who loves to write hate reviews on Will Graham and sticks her nose in places where it does not belong when it comes to the local serial killers. We are also introduced to a character named Tobias Budge, who is at first introduced as like a seemingly minor character who is close friends with Franklin, who is one of Hannibal's more sweatier and nervous patients. But it then turns out that he is also a killer. Like how many killers live here? And he actually finds out about Hannibal being the Ripper. So there's a whole tussle where he attacks Will, and then he comes into Hannibal's office where Hannibal kills Franklin and then proceeds to kill Tobias, but believes that Will is dead because Tobias killed Will. Are you following? Because Tobias killed Will. He didn't, though, but he thinks that he did. And so I feel like I'm describing to you like a melatonin dream. And it is very telling the way that Hannibal responds when he does see Will and finds out that he is alive. Because there are quite literally sparkles in this man's eyes when he looks up at him. Literally says, "I thought you were dead." Oh my god, babe, you're alive. Perhaps Hannibal, perhaps you are staring at him a little too much. I mean, at this rate, we should just throw in like the whole Mike Wheeler lip stares, like just for funsies. I mean, we also get the classic interruption trope here where the two of them are legit just staring into each other's eyes until Jack interrupts them. For those who don't know, interruption trope is a common romance trope as well. While attempting to protect Abigail, Will discovers that there is a copycat killer, and that this copycat killer was the one who killed one of Abigail's old friends, and they were trying to do it in the same way that Garrett Hobbs's MO was. Does that make sense? And soon after, the brother of one of the girls who had been murdered by Abigail's father tries to attack her, and though it is kind of a complicated situation, but essentially she winds up killing him in a way that can't really be labeled as self-defense. I mean, I'm not entirely sure on the logistics of that, but she is absolutely horrified, and Hannibal, thankfully, is there to promptly knock out Alana so that she has no idea what happened, and then basically manipulates Abigail, telling her that there is no way that she would be able to plead self-defense and helps her hide the body. The two of them agreeing to keep her murder a secret. And a lot of people refer to her as Will and Hannibal's daughter for a reason. They kind of refer to them as the family, typically, in fanfiction. This poor girl goes through so much shit. Oh my god. And while this manhunt for the Ripper continues, we are also introduced to Abel Gideon, who is actually already in prison, but who believes himself to be the Chesapeake Ripper. He is not the Chesapeake Ripper, but he was kind of put into this identity crisis by a man named Frederick Chilton. It's okay, I know there's a lot of people. You're doing great. You look great today. And Dr. Frederick Chilton is a man who everybody loves to despise. And he is the main psychiatrist at the Baltimore Hospital for the Criminally Insane. And that is a place that both Hannibal and Will become very intimately familiar with. So this whole plan seems to have kind of backfired, because Gideon manages to escape the hospital, and because he literally thinks that he is a serial killer, tries to murder Chilton by removing several of his organs in a very, very disturbing scene. And he then forces Freddie Lowndes to help keep him alive, serving as a witness in order to get his crimes to be reported. Because if there is one thing that Gideon loves, it is attention. And he is someone who is confirmed to have a narcissistic personality disorder, so it does make sense why he is so why he needs people to know about his crimes. Even though he is a serial killer that is literally, well, he believes himself to be a serial killer that is literally being targeted by the FBI. He's just frolicking through a field like,
oh my god, guys, look at what I did. Look at what I did this weekend, guys.
and so while all of this is going on, we discover, and so does Hannibal, after having Will draw him a clock face, that Will has contracted viral encephalitis. And for those who don't know, viral encephalitis is basically his brain is slowly becoming swollen and inflamed, which is making it so that he is not in his right of mind, which is apparently a perfect excuse for Hannibal to continue on his plans of framing Will. And it is also important to note that while Hannibal is very much aware of Will's condition, he does not do a whole lot to help him. Refuses to, even, and tries to gaslight Will into thinking that nothing is wrong with him. Which in turn only makes Will feel more crazy because, yeah, that's like me running a fever, like an 104-degree fever, and you put your hand in my head and you're like, you feel cold. Bitch, no. Will starts to experience blackouts where he loses time, he starts hallucinating, he starts having seizures, all of which are slowly increasing in their ferocity. Like, he is not doing well. And I would honestly be surprised if he did not have permanent brain damage after going through all of this. And we get the classic ladder scene where Will is trying to explain a visual hallucination to Hannibal, and Hannibal is basically just telling him that it's stress. It's just stress. No. And basically tells him that delusions are disguising his reality. There's a lot hidden in the body language in this scene, especially that, like, it makes Hannibal seem like a predator with the way that he walks up to Will and the way that Will kind of leans back against the ladder. And he is practically begging Hannibal to admit that something is wrong because he knows in his heart that something is wrong. Like, he knows that he's crazy, but not this brand of crazy. And Hannibal, as we are being physically shown here, has the upper hand. There is a power dynamic here because Will trusts him. He trusts his knowledge and his expert opinion. So of course he tries to believe him to an extent. We also get a scene where Will is sitting at Hannibal's desk, which may seem like an insignificant moment to some, but it is actually really fascinating to see because, again, Hannibal has a god complex. Like, he wouldn't let just anyone sit at his desk. You think he'd let Alana sit there? Or Tobias? No. Like, we're being shown, non-verbally, that he is allowing Will to get away with things that he wouldn't let anyone else get away with, which is already showing kind of an interesting push and pull with his actions. Like, even without hearing it from him himself, just by studying his actions, we are able to see this sort of push and pull where he's a little bit at odds with himself. Because Will is a person of special interest to him, but while he's also trying to get him framed for his crimes, he likes him. He likes toying with him. And Will also appears to be very relaxed as he's sitting in this chair because he's letting his guard down around Hannibal, even though we all know that he shouldn't. Which is implying something similar, that Hannibal is similarly a person of interest for Will. Things eventually come to a head when Will manages to capture Gideon, but rather than taking him to the police, he takes him to Hannibal's house with a gun to his head. He confesses that he's having a hard time thinking and he doesn't know what's real, which is terrifying. That is terrifying. Like, it's clear that Will is terrified, and it's telling that out of everyone, anyone that he could go to, he came to Hannibal. He tells Hannibal to tell him if Gideon is real or not because he's literally to the point where he cannot tell if this person is in the room with him or not. Because when he looks at Gideon, he doesn't see Gideon, he sees Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
Tell me if he's real.
And Hannibal tells him that he sees no one, which is of course an outright lie. And as Will literally begs Hannibal not to lie to him, like, It's such a devastating scene because it is showing us that Hannibal has become someone that Will trusts. We started out with Will having no one really that he could trust, to him feeling confident and safe enough in going to this person in a time of extreme stress. Like, Hannibal is the one person that he trusts now. He's the one person that he's confided in about all of this, like his paddle, his crutch. He's supposed to be his light, but he's really not. And it's devastating to see just how, like, he pleads with him. Like, just please tell me the truth.
No, he's right there.
There's no one there, Will.
No, you're lying.
We're alone. You came here alone. Do you remember coming here?
Please don't lie to me.
Garrett Jacob Hobbs is dead. You killed him. You watched him die.
What's happening to me?
And it does show that Will does have a desire for genuine connection, but unfortunately, Hannibal is still a selfish asshole. And Will proceeds to have a seizure because he starts panicking, and Hannibal cups his face, checking his eyes and his forehead, and he claims that this was a mild seizure. And this in turn allows Gideon to flee, though I believe he's later recaptured by authorities, so that didn't work out very well. But the entire season comes to a horrific conclusion of Hannibal successfully pinning all of his crimes on Will Graham, even causing Will himself to become unsure of who exactly he is, because he had even mentioned that he was certain that one of them, either him or Hannibal, killed Abigail. And unfortunately, he does wake up one morning and throws up Abigail's ear into the sink. And yet another scene that made me say, "What the fuck, Hannibal?" out loud at 2 p.m. And Will Graham is then arrested for the crimes that he knows he did not commit and is placed into the Baltimore Hospital for the Criminally Insane, where everyone and their mother seems to believe that he is the killer of Abigail Hobbs and is also the copycat of the Minnesota Shrike. Will thankfully does not go down easy and spends the entire time kicking and screaming, trying to convince people that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper and he is being framed. But just like me with my fiction professor in my undergrad, everyone loves Hannibal. So of course, Will just looks even more crazy. And it also doesn't help that Will's diagnosis of encephalitis makes it hard for the FBI to validate any of his claims.
Can't live with him. Can't live without him. And Will saying clearly to Hannibal,
I don't know if I can save myself. Maybe that's just fine.
We always had, certainly I had, and I think we all had in the room, this good thing about, we never want to get to the point where Will and Hannibal have a fist fight, or Will has to take Hannibal down. You know, it felt false somehow.
Y'all, it is currently 11 p.m. We are now on to season 2. And similarly, I cannot actually wear these glasses because then I look a little creepy. So they're gonna sit on my forehead. But don't worry, it's all part of the whole Will Graham experience. So season 2 is kind of more Will focused. We're kind of focusing on Will's becoming, as Hannibal is so apt to describe it as. But essentially, season 2 can be also summed up as Hannibal regretting his decision to put his boyfriend in jail because now he misses him. Will is still attempting to tell anyone that he can that Hannibal is the true killer and had framed him for all of his victims. And at first there is a minor investigation of Hannibal, but it only really seems to fuel the fire because they wind up finding more evidence that incriminates Will instead of Hannibal. There are only a select few people that do actually come to visit Will while he is being held in the hospital. So we have Alana, who is still struggling with a deep-seated guilt for allowing Jack to do all this to Will in the first place. By the way, I never really mentioned it because I didn't really care. But Hannibal and Alana do get into a romantic relationship for a period of time, and it is also because of that relationship that Alana does not believe Will when he tries to tell her that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper, because there is such a thing as rose-colored glasses. We also have Beverly Katz. I'm still not over her. We have Frederick Chilton, who is just being an asshole and is honestly more interested in the press coverage that he's going to get for having the great serial killer in his hospital. And of course, we have Hannibal. While Will is being held, Hannibal actually starts seeing his own psychiatrist, who is a woman named Bedelia. I do not like Bedelia. We do get a lovely scene where she essentially tells Hannibal that he is obsessed with Will Graham. Girl, we've been there, done that. And we soon after find out that Will has been officially diagnosed with viral encephalitis, and he is now being given the proper medical treatment and medication in order to prepare him to be able to stand on trial. So with a steadily clearing mind, Will is now able to actually investigate his own memory palace, which is a term that Hannibal had frequently used to describe one's psyche, basically. And he is trying to figure out how he can prove that Hannibal Lecter is the Chesapeake Ripper, or at the very least, just find evidence that he is not who everyone is saying that he is. Those memory blockades are finally falling, which is allowing him to recall how Hannibal would purposefully introduce seizures. And I don't entirely remember when the scene occurs, but he does remember the time that Hannibal literally stuck a tube down his throat so that he could shove Abigail's ear down there. And that scene was also very hard to watch. Has anyone here seen Terrifier 3? If you know, you know. But even as he is discovering all this, Hannibal still keeps coming to visit his boyfriend because he misses him. And Will decides to take this as an opportunity to give the man a taste of his own medicine. And he tries to manipulate Hannibal back. There's one particular visit with Hannibal and Alana, and Will, literally almost starts to cry. He's a great actor, but the actor is a great actor, but also, Will is a great actor, is what I mean. Anyway, he basically confides in them, saying that he doesn't know who he is anymore, and that he doesn't know what is worse, believing that he did it or believing that Hannibal did it. Because, of course, Will knows that all Hannibal really wants is he wants to be friends. He wants to be on Will's good side. He wants Will to love him. So he's giving him what he wants.
Will, let us help you. Let me help you.
I need your help.
And we can see on Hannibal's face that it looks like he does believe him. He then turns to Hannibal saying things like, I needed you, I trusted you, in a very heartbreaking and believable manner of asking him for help, and Hannibal immediately folds. Immediately. Mike Wheeler during the Rain fight immediately folds. Immediately offers his help. And trying to psychoanalyze Hannibal is a little bit difficult, but I do think it genuinely adds that little twinkle to his eyes. He likes feeling needed, okay? Not in the Mike Wheeler way, but he likes knowing that Will needs him to an extent, that Will relies on him. And here, Will is literally telling Hannibal exactly what he wants to hear, because Will Graham is insanely smart. We get to witness Will as he slowly starts to remember things, and he starts working on identifying the muralist, who is another serial killer as well. And he specifically remembers himself bringing a captured Gideon to Hannibal's home, so he is now finally able to distinguish it was not the dead body of Garrett Jacob Hobbs, but it was Gideon. And he tries to get Gideon to testify in his trial, but unfortunately, the doofus just pretends he didn't even know who Hannibal was. Because we can regret locking our boyfriend up, but we can't let him out just yet. And despite all of his efforts, Will's trial does seem to be leaning towards finding him as guilty, even though all of the evidence collected has been ones that he knows Hannibal did plant. I'm pretty sure that Hannibal had even, when he was checking on Will's dogs for him or something, he literally wrapped human hair or something, or bits of DNA in the homemade fishing lures that Will makes. Because, guys, Will, he just wants to fish. He just wants to fly fish. Jesus Christ. And during the trial, An anonymous envelope is presented that has a human ear inside, and it appears to have been removed with the exact same murder weapon that Will was accused of using in the murders, which is something that would have had to have been taken out of the evidence lockers. Quite interesting. And if that's not weird enough for you, we also get the peculiar murder of the bailiff for the trial, which is a murder that Hannibal very fittingly claims to be a copycat of Will's, but it could not possibly be him. And while you may be sitting here thinking, like, well, maybe Hannibal finally, figured his shit out and he feels guilty, but just hold your horses. Because when he is asked about this, Hannibal does claim that he never would have thought to send an ear in the mail. But he does testify that Will is and will always be his friend, despite Will knowing that they will likely never be friends again. Haha, sweetie. Yes. Oh my god, no, that is called a toxic friendship, my guy. But unfortunately, that testimony is seen to be a little bit too ambiguous, which, like, what the fuck? And later on, a late-night janitor stumbles across another dead body, this time of the judge, because perhaps he was being a little too rude as well. And it is displayed in a manner that is identical to that of the Chesapeake Ripper. And yes, Hannibal was the one who did that crime. But the ear was not. The ear was not him. And when Jack is interrogating Hannibal about this, Hannibal claims that it was a very goal-oriented killing, that of the judge, and that they were trying to get the mistrial for Will's sake, which is confirming in a roundabout way that yes, Hannibal has changed his mind, and he is now actively trying to get his boyfriend out of jail. Never mind that he is the reason why he is in there in the first place. Just forget about that part. I swear to God, I wonder if, like, every time Hannibal looks at Will, he just, like, sees this. That's just all that he sees. Anyway, Will is now filled with a newfound hope that perhaps he will be able to prove his innocence, and he allows Chilton to inject him with a certain type of truth drug that is, basically just sodium amytal? Is that a real thing? Like, genuinely? Because if so, gross. I don't like needles. And he's hoping that it will help to drag out even more of his repressed memories, and also in an attempt to further manipulate Hannibal, depending on whatever new information is. And while this plan is being put into motion, Beverly, oh my god, our Lord and Savior, Beverly Katz, she arrives to ask his opinion on some killings that are currently happening on the outside, and it's while they are talking that Beverly reveals that she always believed Will, and I love her so much. Will appreciates her belief and misguidedly winds up kind of like convincing her to investigate Hannibal on her own, which is the decision that ultimately, So it's a very dangerous thing to do that ultimately leads to Hannibal finding her in his basement, where she found evidence of all of his crimes. And he kills her, and to me, it was one of the most terrifying moments in the show, because we, literally all that we see is we see Beverly as she turns around, sees Hannibal standing, at the stairs, he blocking her only exit, and he's just, frozen. God. And then all of a sudden, he reaches over, flips off the lights, and then we hear a gunshot. And we see nothing else. We don't see Beverly again until her body is shown, because Will Graham is brought to see her. And Hannibal has essentially divided her into vertical slabs of glass, like a museum piece, like she's been dissected, kind of. Girl, you were too pretty to go. And now, with even more of a thirst for vengeance, Will tries to get Freddie Lowndes to conduct an interview where Will basically is asking the killer who sent him the ear to contact him, because I think by this point he kind of has a feeling that it's not Hannibal. And the plan does wind up working, and a nurse at the hospital that Will is being held at unveils himself. His name is Matthew Brown, and he's creepy as shit. And Matthew Brown is the copycat killer and is frankly quite the fangirl of Will, believing that he's the Chesapeake Ripper, because he is lonely. And he wants someone to be murder husbands with, but like, bestie, he's already married. I hate to break it to you. Has anyone seen Santa Clarita Diet? Because it was kind of giving me those vibes. It was kind of giving me Ramona vibes. I was like, no, this isn't right. Like, no, dude, he already has his Joel. You can't be his Joel. No, no. And so anyway, rather than doing the smart thing and telling Jack that his plan was a success, Will kind of lets the need for revenge overpower his mind, and he sends Matthew to kill Hannibal as revenge for him killing Beverly and Abigail and like everything he did. He's done a lot of things. And I will say that while Matthew does not actually kill him, he does get pretty close to it. And the scene it's a very graphic scene, so I'm not going to show a lot of it. But it is an interesting concept because even though, like, up until this point, we've seen Will be wrongly accused of every one of Hannibal's misdeeds. And so, in a way, we as the viewers do feel a sense of satisfaction when we see Matthew get so close to killing him. Like, he literally has him hung up by his neck, standing on a bucket with, like, his arms outstretched and, like, a religious symbolism, but his wrists are slit. And we see Hannibal, like, we have seen Hannibal do so many horrific things. And so, yes, we would like him to die, but we also don't, to an extent, because we don't know what's going to happen if Will gets caught. And at this point, it also seems like Hannibal is one of his best shots at getting out of the prison. And we also know how he feels about Will. And like when I was watching the scene, I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted Hannibal to die or not, which is a fascinating writing tactic if you are able, because so many villains are written to be just that. They're just black and white. Like you have the hero and you have the villain. But here it's like, it's a bit more complex than that. Because Fuller has been able to humanize him in a way that villains like Vecna, they kind of failed to do, because it makes us kind of hesitate. We've also come to learn that he is perhaps the only person in the world who can fully understand what Will is dealing with. Because Will does wish to be understood, but that also means accepting all of the baggage that comes with him and the piles of dead bodies. But it seems that we don't have a whole lot to worry about because Gideon overhears the plan and warns Jack about it. And so Jack manages to save Hannibal just moments before he dies. And furious that Will would even try to pull a stunt like that, Jack goes to interrogate him, who proceeds to finally convince him that Hannibal is a bad guy, and he promises that he will find proof based off of the Ripper's killing patterns and coinciding with when Hannibal hosts his famous dinner parties. Because I don't know if I mentioned it, but Hannibal's whole thing is he likes to cook. He cooks a lot. But you never know for sure if what he's feeding you is human or if it's an animal or something else. And so despite Jack actually attending one of these dinner parties and asking if he can take some of the treats home with him, upon doing some further testing, it is revealed that the results didn't contain any human meat anyway. So yet another win for Urine Master 3000. And so even though we didn't get proof of Hannibal being the killer, Will's charges are still officially dropped because these murders were happening while he was in prison. There's no way that he really could have done it. And so he's officially released, and he has now been mainly treated. You can tell because his hair is slicked back for a little while. It's a whole new look, guys. He did his hair. And he's also just thinking a lot more clearly now. But Chilton is still a prissy little biatch, and he rightfully supposes that Hannibal is the Ripper and was helping Will get out of jail by killing. And so Will just tells him that all Hannibal wants is a friend. Okay. We could psychoanalyze this as well. Because, I mean, it doesn't sound good when you say that the psychopath feels lonely, but like to an extent, I do understand. I do get what they're saying because like if you imagine it like a hitman, essentially, you know, like they spend so much time, like it's too dangerous to get close to anyone. So you do all the killing yourself, you do all the cleanup by yourself, you spend countless hours in motel rooms and on trains and in taxis. Like it's a very solitary lifestyle to lead. And so it does kind of make sense because if you let someone in, then you risk getting found out. And humans are inept to crave companionship. And like even someone like Hannibal who does not view humans as anything more than like rude pigs, the idea that there is a person out there who could understand him is a game changer, especially if that person would eventually be willing to kill alongside him rather than just make him change who he is. Like, it's a genuinely fascinating character archetype that's being built because they are both like intrinsically very lonely people. But when they are together, they aren't really lonely anymore, even if it is still very, very toxic. And so since Will is feeling up to it, Jack immediately puts Will back to work and has him investigate a cabin that could potentially belong to the Ripper. And after they go through with the investigation, we are now in kind of a limbo between whether or not the Ripper is Hannibal or whether the Ripper is Chilton. And I know that may not make a whole lot of sense, but like again, it would take me hours. It already is taking me hours, but hours if I were to go through every little detail of this show. So I'm just trying to focus on what you need to know. But because obviously Hannibal is closer to the evidence, like again, keep your enemies closer. This man is very smart, but also very evil. And because he is also aware of Jack's suspicion, Hannibal tries to throw the blame off of him by framing Chilton. He essentially kills a bunch of FBI agents and induces a blackout in Chilton, so he believes that he committed the murders without knowing. It's like this is the most elaborate game of cat and mouse that I have ever. But of course, because Will is admittedly almost equally as obsessed with Hannibal as Hannibal is with him, he is able to convince Jack that Chilton is not the Ripper. They do wind up scoring a plan through the use of very clever fisherman analogies, because Will loves fly fishing, and they decide that in order to catch him, they're going to need to build up Hannibal's confidence, and by doing that, will need to return to therapy and make himself vulnerable to Hannibal. However, whether he wants to admit it or not, it is very clear that Hannibal is still massively rubbing off on him in kind of all the wrong ways, if his previous actions were not enough to indicate this. Because we get this absolutely fascinating scene in therapy where Will basically tells Hannibal that he may have to pretend, but Will doesn't. And all that Hannibal says is that, no, you don't have to pretend. Not with me, baby.
You may have to pretend, but I don't.
No, you don't. Not with me.
And the profiling shots we get here, like the sheer intensity of the lighting. Hannibal is not denying a thing here. He is not denying anything. Because of course, he knows the truth. But he's also not admitting anything either. And yes, this will become something that frequently happens, and yes, it will become very frustrating very fast. But they essentially both agree to not lie to each other, and if they must lie by omission, not by outright saying something that's not true. And this is kind of like where I started to sort of think like the whole, is Will actually okay with Hannibal being this sort of thing? That only continues as the series progresses. And Will admits to fantasizing about killing Hannibal. And when Hannibal wants to know how, which already, bro, like we're not even pretending anymore, are we? Like, Will basically tells him that he'd do it with his hands.
Tell me, how would you do it?
With my hands.
And the way that Hannibal looks at him, oh my god. Like, dude, Guys, get a room. Because killing with the hands, everyone knows. That's very personal. That's very intimate. Like, it's not killing with a knife or a gun. And when Hannibal kind of asks him, he's like, am I going to have to worry about you killing me, Will? Will basically says, I don't want to kill you anymore, Dr. Lecter.
I don't want to kill you anymore, Dr. Lecter. Not now that I finally find you interesting.
Not now that I finally find you interesting. What kind of fucked up flirting is this? And this is a callback from season 1 where he basically told him that he didn't find Hannibal interesting in the slightest. And we are now reaching what I would probably call the midpoint of their relationship. Like, these two have now come to a bit of a crest. Like, the primary discovery has been made and to an extent unveiled between them because they both know that Hannibal is the Ripper and they both have kind of agreed to not really lie about it anymore. And even though Hannibal has never outright actually confessed to it to him yet, it's interesting just how open he kind of is about it. Because Will seems to be one of the only people that Hannibal seems to delight in him knowing this truth. But now we are also left with the question on like what exactly is supposed to happen now. And so we do get another side investigation that deals with a man who had been manipulated into killing his social worker, and we get that beautiful line that is your social worker in that horse? And this is one of the most popular scenes in the show in support of Hannigram, so we're gonna slow it down because we're talking about this scene right here. So Will makes an attempt to shoot the social worker because of the way that he manipulated an innocent man, because he's likely seen some aspects of himself in him, and this is confirmed when Hannibal steps in and actually stops him.
It won't feel the same, Will. It won't feel like killing me. It doesn't have to.
Not out of the sake for the man, but out of the sake for Will's sake. And he basically tells him that it won't feel the same. It won't feel like killing Hannibal. And this is the closest thing to confirmation that we've gotten yet. Because Hannibal basically talks to Will like he's soothing an angered and like fearful husband or animal, kind of. Like trying to talk someone off the ledge, basically. And he tells Will that if he is going to kill, then he must do it for himself, which is implying that every time Hannibal kills, it is to an extent a selfish act. Even the ones that he did for the sake of getting Will out of prison, it was for a selfish need. It was because Hannibal just wanted Will to be close to him again.
You have to do it for yourself. Please don't. You would be wise to remain silent, Mr. Ingram.
We get the speak of the reckoning here as Hannibal says that it's not what he had promised himself, and right before Will, like he's going to shoot, even after all this he is going to shoot, Hannibal grabs the gun and tenderly takes it out of Will's hand. And Will is like silent for the entirety of this, and Hannibal cradles his cheek.
An intrusion I could never entirely predict you. I can feed the caterpillar. I can whisper through the chrysalis, but what hatches follows its own nature and is beyond me.
In an insanely intimate gesture, like Mads does smitten Hannibal perfectly, and basically tells him that with all of his knowledge, Hannibal could never fully predict Will. He seems proud and almost impressed with the fact that Will is finally seeming to embrace this violent side of him that he has been fighting off. And it is getting to the point where it doesn't really feel like he's pretending anymore. Because, of course, we all know that this is part of his plan to, get Hannibal to trust him so that his guard will come down. But, we're kind of reaching that point where it's like, at what point are we not pretending anymore? And honestly, like Will literally looks up at him, making the eye contact that he supposedly despises. And if I were the director, I think that this would have been the perfect time to have them kiss. I'm just saying. And we get even more confirmation of Will's gradual descent into the dark side when he dreams of killing Hannibal by strangling him against a tree. And in that same dream, we also see Hannibal telling Will that the only reason why Will knows that Hannibal is the Ripper is because he views Hannibal as his beloved, which is basically implying that Hannibal is his other half. Like, I don't really know what other way you can read that in a platonic sense. And meanwhile, we are also introduced to the case of Randall Tier, a man who has been brutally murdering people while pretending to be an animal. Because why not? Like, literally never before have I watched a TV show that made me say what the fuck out loud so many times. Like, and in a very odd form of courtship. And as like a misguided notion too of like giving Will both a test and a gift, Hannibal sends Randall Tier to kill him as an act of reciprocation for Will trying to kill Hannibal. And of course, we have to attack a poor puppy in the process, but like don't worry, because all the dogs are fine. Like I couldn't watch this if they killed one of the dogs. But Will manages to survive and he actually kills Randall in his own hands, but he imagines that he's killing Hannibal rather than Randall. He then delivers the body to Hannibal's home like a cat, where he splays him out on the kitchen table like a gift, essentially angrily telling Hannibal that they're even now. And like a normal person would maybe like freak out, call the cops. But no, we're beyond pretending. So Hannibal is just proud of his husband because, oh my god. And he just like tenderly cleans Will's hands. And then they display the body together in the museum in the way that the Ripper would. Yeah. They are now actively killing together. Will, I think we're a little bit past this now. Like Will, honey, I don't know. And honestly, I would mark this as the point of no return. Like the murdering of Randall Tier. Like I don't think Will would ever be able to escape Hannibal after this. Like I do agree that he was on a slippery slope from the beginning, but I would put my money on that moment and saying that that's the moment of no return. And it's also important to note that he is still trying to get Hannibal caught, but like it's alarming just how much he seems to genuinely be enjoying it. And a certain investigative journalist has been working with Will and Jack in order to get Hannibal caught, and they wind up staging a scene to make it look like Will killed her after she investigates his home. And there's this whole scene where he literally drags her out of her car, like through the window, and it definitely puts into perspective, like, he may seem docile compared to Hannibal, but he is strong. He is scary. In some ways, I think that Will is a lot scarier than Hannibal. And he delivers a section of what he claims to be Freddy's meat for the two of them to cook and eat together. Which, of course, Hannibal naturally falls for. Because why wouldn't he? Like, at this point, you know, Will has already done a lot with him. It is getting to the point now, like I said, where it's like the line is so blurred, I don't know where it is anymore. And like a proud husband, the trick is working. He's genuinely giving Hannibal the gift of being seen and of having a partner. The Joel and Sheila of it all. Like participating in something that he enjoys with him regardless of how twisted it is. And he believes that he is changing Will, even though it's a bit unclear what the truth of that is, but Will, to an extent, believes that he is not. And while this whole Freddy Lounge fake-out death is happening, Hannibal is also giving therapy to both Mason and Margot Verger. There are so many characters in this show. I'm sorry, like, it's not as bad as, like, Stranger Things or Miraculous Ladybug, but, like, there are a lot. There are a lot of people. And no, these two do not get a pass on the toxic family relationship drama because they actually get the deluxe edition. Because they are also rich and own a pig farm. And we soon learn that Mason has been essaying his sister, which has led her to fantasize about killing him, wanting to have a boy child that can eventually take over the family farm. And as Hannibal is forming a plan in order to kill Mason with Will's help, it is then revealed that Will has slept with Margot in an attempt to give her the kid that she wants. But like, of course, we don't have to worry about it because Mason decides to, like, once he finds out about it, he decides to forcibly have Margot undergo a hysterectomy, which is in order to prevent it. And of course, Will is mad at Hannibal because I'm pretty sure that that's how Mason found out. And then Mason's mad at Margot.
And then Margot's mad at Will, and then Will is mad at Hannibal, and Hannibal is mad at Will, and Hannibal is mad at Margot, and everyone is mad at everyone, okay?
And then Will comes home one night to find a drugged Mason Verger scraping off parts of his face and feeding it to Will's dogs.
Hello.
And he feels no pain due to, like, the drug that Hannibal gave him. And of course Hannibal arrives, and the two of them watch as Mason is literally, like, tearing off the entire bottom half of his face. Like, it's just all teeth. There's no lip no more. It's just all teeth. And they truly do seem like the murder husbands here, because they are both complicit. They are both so complicit. And Hannibal literally tells Mason to eat his nose when he says that he's hungry. And he does. Mason does manage to survive this because he makes some attempts at facial reconstruction in, like, season 3, but now he is mortal enemies with Will and Hannibal and wants to kill them both for revenge, which, do I blame him? Do I blame him? Unfortunately, our cute little budding romance between Will and Hannibal comes to an abrupt hiccup when Hannibal smells Freddy on Will when they are both destroying evidence in Hannibal's office, and the two of them, like, they have literally started to plan to run away together in order to escape imprisonment. Which, again, totally platonic, normal thing to do with your best buddy. Yeah, sure. But it is one of the most elaborate cat and mouse games that I've ever seen. I keep saying that, but it's true. Because we then have the dinner that is being planned between Will, Hannibal, and Jack, where essentially Will is kind of stuck between genuinely wanting to run away with Hannibal, but also wanting to have justice. But, like, is he in too deep? Because, you know, it's like the way that I picture this is literally like a secret agent that is trying to court someone in order to get them to let their guard down, but they actually developed real feelings over the course of it. Like, that's quite literally what has been happening here. Because Will does seem to have lost his original goal along the way. He has been giving the gift of seeing this side of Hannibal and has been helping him. And even if he does lock Hannibal up, he's still gonna have to live with everything that he did. So neither one of Will's plans go according to plan, because the FBI is actually planning to arrest both Will and Jack once they find out that there's no actual evidence that Hannibal was the Ripper. And Jack finds out and tries to attack Hannibal by himself early, which is such a dumb decision. And this is also where we get that lovely he's in the pantry scene when Alana arrives, because
Where's Jack? In the pantry.
Alana winds up informing Will about the arrest warrants, and Will calls Hannibal in order to warn him about Jack coming, in a scene that is like a parallel to season 1 when Hannibal called to warn Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
They know.
And Will then also leaves for Hannibal's house, but Alana shows up and both she and Jack are brutally injured while trying to fend Hannibal off. Like, he is strong as shit. And Alana was actually pushed out of the window by Abigail, who is revealed to have been alive and well. I don't think I ever mentioned, but yeah, they faked her death. And we uncover the reality that she, of course, had been manipulated by Hannibal into faking her death, and she's been kind of like living and hiding this entire time. And Will arrives just a bit too late, calling an ambulance for Alana, who is laying on the front sidewalk and does not seem to be able to move. And later on, I believe that she was like paralyzed for a certain time. And then in like season 3, she has to walk with a cane. But he then runs into the house in order to stop Hannibal, and we get what is a breakup scene. It's a breakup scene. That's the only way to describe what occurs here. Because it is so devastating to watch. Like, you have a relationship that is so complex And like, you somehow want them to be together, even though everything is telling you that you shouldn't. So anyway, Will finds out that Abigail is alive. And seeing her, he winds up lowering his weapon because he had withdrawn his gun. And Hannibal appears behind him, and the murder family has been reunited. Oh God. Oh. But good things never last very long. And Hannibal then accuses Will of wanting to frame him so that he'd be killed by Jack, lamenting how the three of them could have all fled and been happy together. And that they could have been happy if only Will hadn't ruined it. In what other way can you read this, like other than a breakup? Because that is all that I hear. Like, would you run away with your good pal, your good buddy to Cuba and raise a daughter with him or her or them? Will tries to tell Hannibal that he wanted him to leave, that he should have left. That was why he literally had called ahead of time to warn Hannibal about Jack. But Hannibal simply says that they couldn't have left without him.
We couldn't leave without you.
Like, everything about this is romantically coded. Everything about it. And it's also very telling just how deep Hannibal is. Just how deeply in love with this man Hannibal is. To the point where he is not willing to leave, even if it means saving himself. No, he doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to leave Will behind. Like, if you don't see it at this rate, I don't know what to tell you, man. And the scene also heavily reminds me of that scene from You, season 2, where Joe hallucinates Beck. I'd like to make a bit of another comparison for all of y'all skeptics out there. Because for those who don't know, Joe and Beck were in a romantic relationship in season 1 up until Beck found out that Joe was basically a stalker and a serial killer who was killing her friends and doing all of this stuff out of what he believed was a way of protecting her and proving his devotion to her. And after attempting to lock her up, Joe wound up killing Beck when she tried to escape. She now haunts his memory, and as he is dealing with a new conquest, she approaches him through the glass and she tells him that he hurt the man that he just killed, even though, as Joe claims, he was just trying to survive. So bear with me here. But Joe is actually Will in this case, and Beck is Hannibal.
I'm trying to survive. He wanted to hurt me.
Well, you hurt him.
Okay, just don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Like, just hang on. So he claims that he's just trying to survive, which is paralleling Will just trying to play along with Hannibal and do what he thinks is right in order to bring him to justice. Even in his mind, even if that means hurting people in the process. Beck tells him that he hurt her, and Joe immediately protests, saying that he loved her more than anything.
And you hurt me.
I loved you more than I've ever.
And you hurt me.
Which is yet another parallel because Will has never truly felt seen before. Like, sure, he may have loved and liked other people before, but the understanding between him and Hannibal is on a whole different level. And in a way, it's clear here that Will did not want to hurt Hannibal, but he did. And Beck tells Joe once again that he did hurt her and takes off her scarf to reveal what looks like the choke marks from when Joe killed her. And Joe seems to be in genuine shock as he stares at these marks like it's the first time that he's ever seen them. And even in this scene, Will doesn't quite seem to fully understand when Hannibal guts him. Because Hannibal has been on this pedestal this entire time. He's been untouchable.
You understand?
Like, it seems like nothing could ever hurt him. So how could someone like me, how could someone like Will Graham, who is so beneath him, how could I possibly be able to hurt you to this extent? Like, how do I hold that power? You know what I mean? How is this person able to hold this power? It's just, It rocks your whole foundation. It changes your whole perspective because he has hurt him. And Beck literally tells Joe to look at her. Will is making direct eye contact with Hannibal in this scene, looking at him, looking at the hurt in his eyes, and Beck leans against the glass, pressing her palms against it, and tells Joe that sometimes we hurt the one that we love.
Sometimes we hurt the one we love, right?
That he's not afraid love will hurt him, but that he will hurt love.
You're afraid you'll hurt her.
I'm sorry.
And Love is actually the name of the girl that he's currently trying to pursue, but it also rings true for Will here because he has hurt the one that he loves. And that idea itself honestly seems scarier than the idea of loving Hannibal, just in general, of delighting in being with him and of thinking about him, because he wanted to run away with him. He didn't want to hurt him. And Joe tells her that he's sorry as he presses his bloodied hands to hers, like through the glass. And this is yet another parallel to the fresh blood on Will's hands.
No, please stay. Please.
He is sorry, and he has done horrible things, like participated in things that he once swore that he would never enjoy. Like, this is quite literally like a one-to-one parallel of a breakup between a canon romantic couple in a show that does have some pretty similar themes. Though, between the two of them, I do prefer Hannibal and Hannigram. But unfortunately, Hannibal does prove that theory to be correct as he hurts the one that he loves as a form of punishment. He cups Will's cheek again before stabbing him in the stomach and cutting along his abdomen, which is not enough to kill him, however, but it is definitely enough to incapacitate him. He tenderly holds Will's head as Will grabs his shoulders and guys, this is what Tumblr means when they say that somehow stabbing can be erotic because everything about this scene is deeply personal, down to the way that he's holding the knife and the way that he's holding Will. There are tears in both of their eyes. Hannibal's pain is palpable. And he doesn't want to hurt Will, but he wants Will to understand how he felt. Again, this is his version of a punishment. And Will does seem deeply apologetic as he is pulled into a hug, and Hannibal even strokes his hair as he says that a place was made for Abigail in Will's world. He tells Will that he had wanted to surprise him, with Abigail, but that Will also wanted to surprise him with getting arrested.
He wanted to suppress me.
Which is not entirely the truth. And it literally feels like a couple on their anniversary that are splitting up. And he allows Will to fall to the floor, and Hannibal does seem genuinely frustrated. We are seeing so much emotion coming through that before it used to be just a blank slate, a sheet of paper. But he is heartbroken here as he tells Will how he allowed himself to be vulnerable with Will only for Will to backstab him.
I let you know me. See me. I gave you a rare gift. But you didn't want it. Didn't I?
And the music here is also very crucial too because it is so soft and melancholic and bitter. And this is the one point where Hannibal basically lets his guard drop and he tells Will that he had given Will a gift and Will didn't want it. To which Will kind of garbles, but he says didn't I? Didn't I want it? Confirming what we were all suspecting, that to an extent Will was falling for his own trick. He was starting to delight in it too. And Hannibal claims that Will had wanted to kill him, but Will says no, and then Hannibal continues that if not that, then you would have taken away my freedom then. If you didn't want me dead, then you didn't want me to be free. And Hannibal then asks Will if he truly thought that he had changed him in the way that Hannibal had changed Will, And Will basically tells him that he already did.
Do you believe you could change me the way I've changed you?
I already did.
Is the truth. Yeah. And I think Hannibal knows it too, because he's silent for a very long time. Because Hannibal has found his Beck. He has found the one person who will continue to haunt him for the end of his days. The one lover that he hurt because he doesn't know how to love something without hurting it too. And Hannibal says that he forgives Will, implying that his attempt at having Hannibal arrested, and wants to know if Will can forgive him, which is comparatively Joe asking Beck to forgive him. And Will immediately starts to protest because he knows what's going to happen next, because Hannibal looks at Abigail, who has been watching this entire scene unfold, terrified. And it's clear here that Will knows exactly what Hannibal is going to do, because he tries to beg him not to do it, but he's been stabbed. He literally does not have the strength to do anything. And Hannibal slits Abigail's throat in a way that is identical to how her father did it. He allows her to fall to the ground and bleed out, and Hannibal then tells Will that he has the ability to make it all go away if he just allows himself to die. But Will tries to use his remaining energy to save Abigail, and it doesn't work. Hannibal winds up leaving them, and he walks outside and into the rain with Will's coat, and it's later revealed that Hannibal did wind up fleeing to Europe, where he dragged along Bedelia, his cutesy little enabler, to play pretend and play dollhouse by acting as his wife. And that is also where we will find them in season 3, which is the final season.
The final embrace was really about Will Graham acknowledging that he couldn't save himself or Hannibal Lecter in this scenario, and so much of it was threaded through the earlier parts of the season, particularly in the Italian chapter, where Will is acknowledging to Chio that he feels that he has to kill Hannibal to prevent himself from becoming Hannibal. And then in the Red Dragon arc, in the scenes with Bedelia, where she says,
"You will hardly be caught a second time."
I don't intend Hannibal to be caught a second time.
We have now made it to the 3rd and final season, where we open up on one of my favorite things in the world, which is Hannibal riding a motorcycle. Of course, he's wearing a helmet because safety. And we get a bit of background here that Bedelia and Hannibal have arrived in Florence and are now using the identities of Mr. and Mrs. Fell, pretending to be married, because of course they are. And this is also implying that if Will were to have gone with him, that they also likely would have posed as husbands and pretended that they were all a family, like 2 husbands raising a daughter, because otherwise, admittedly, that would look a little weird if it were just 2 guys and a daughter. But of course, Hannibal is still not Hannibal without murder, and it becomes clear that he has still been actively killing, but as Bedelia points out, it has been a lot less than it was when they were in America. And one person he kills is someone who found out that he was just pretending to be Dr. Fell, and even suggests that he would like to help him. Hannibal is evidently not interested, because no one can understand him like Will. And so he kills. And so he kills this man while Bedelia just sits there and watches. I feel like I'm kind of dressed like Bedelia, but I was trying to go for more like Hannibal outfit. Whatever. And he even asks her, I believe, if she wants to participate or watch, and she just says that no, she doesn't want to participate. And do I blame her? I don't blame her. But his actions here are very much they are so giving me Ed after his breakup with Steed in Our Flag Means Death. Very much emo, mourning, he's very much in mourning because he just lost his partner in crime. And he's just trying to live. And so in the meantime, Will wakes up from the hospital, which is again proving my theory that Hannibal did not want to kill him, but simply wanted to hurt him. It was kind of like he was giving Will the option, I guess, if he wanted to die. And he dreams about Abigail coming to visit, and she claims that he did hurt them so that they would survive, and talks about an alternate world where they all could have been together, which is implying again in Will's subconscious he had wanted to run away with Hannibal. He did. It's confirmed time and time again. Don't even try to tell me otherwise, because I will slaughter you in that argument. And of course, we get even more confirmation of this because a little bit later, Jack literally appears while Will is working on a boat and asks him why he warned Hannibal that day. To which Will says that he didn't know, that he had just wanted to call Hannibal, and he made up his mind once he heard Hannibal's voice.
I deliberated while the phone rang. I decided when I heard his voice. Because he was my friend. And because I wanted to run away with him.
Hello? Just for funsies, try to read that in any other way. That is not romantic. I'll wait. He admits that he told him to run and explicitly states that he wanted to go with him and that he was Will's friend. Okay. When Will's boat is fixed up, he actually uses it to sail to Europe in order to find Hannibal. Girls, like this is what they mean when they say if he wanted to, he would. He makes it to Palermo, where Hannibal's favorite chapel is, and in order to try and get into Hannibal's mindset, he's kind of visiting all the places that he knows are familiar to Hannibal. And we do get it's like a little hide and seek game where they both know that they're in the same place, but they don't actually see each other. I think that this occurs when it's at that chapel, but Will tells Hannibal that he forgives him. And then a few days later, a human body that has been molded into the shape of an anatomically correct heart is found in the middle of the chapel. just a cute little Valentine's Day gift. Will and hallucination Abigail piece together that this is Hannibal's broken heart, essentially, that he left for Will to find. And this is something that it's verbally stated. It's his broken heart. Will somehow seems to know that Hannibal is watching all of this, and he finally allows himself to accept that Abigail is not truly with him, because this whole time it's been kind of iffy, but we kind of know that she's dead, and he accepts that she did bleed out when Hannibal slit her throat. And we get a bit more of a cat and mouse sequence where the next couple of episodes are basically just dealing with Will trying to visit every single place that he can think of where Hannibal might have been hiding, and he even visits his family home in Lithuania that has now been abandoned, except it's not really abandoned because he finds a woman there named Chio who turns out to be Hannibal's cousin. And it's because of her that he winds up gaining the confidence to continue looking for Hannibal, even though she is of very little help. She literally pushes him off of the back of a train after kissing him, I'm pretty sure. The amount of kisses that occur in this show between the two people who I want to see kiss never actually kiss. It's just everyone else. So, okay. Where have I heard that before? Jesus Christ. Okay. And she basically explains to him what happened with Hannibal and his little sister, Misha, too, where she was basically murdered and he was forced to eat her. I don't even think we have, I don't think we have the time to unpack that one. So yeah, Will also winds up killing someone. Will also winds up killing someone while he is there. And he straightens his body up as an offering. Oh my god. Before he leaves with Chio, and it is when he returns to Florence that we finally get the reunion that we've all been waiting for. Because he finds Hannibal in the Uffizi art gallery as he's sketching the Primavera. And they both look a little bit worse for wear as Will takes a seat beside him. And this entirely scene, like, it's actually quite sweet. It's like, oh god, if I had to compare it to an AO3 tag, probably mark this as enemies to friends to lovers to exes to enemies to lovers again. There you go. There you go. But the music is also important to note here because it is very tender and bittersweet. Like, it's not high-strung and tense. And the way, like, they're smiling at each other genuinely, like two lovers meeting again after spending like years apart. And it feels too good to be true because it is too good to be true. And Hannibal delivers one of the most romantic lines in the show where he says that if he saw Will every single day forever, that he would still remember this particular moment.
If I saw you every day, forever, Will, I would remember this time.
The day that he got to see him again, and Will actually smiles and laughs, like, seeming almost bittersweet when he says how odd it is to see Hannibal right in front of him, implying what we already know, that, like, his thoughts have been entirely consumed by Hannibal. It was to the point where he didn't know if he'd ever actually see him again. And a majority of this season focuses on teaching us, like, about Hannibal's backstory, and Will explains as such that he spent this whole time staring at after images of Hannibal, retracing his steps, learning about him. Is this something that you do with your friends? Your pal, your good old buddy pal, yeah, your best guy friend. Will admits that he had wanted to understand Hannibal before he saw him again, which is proving that his intent is stemming way beyond just revenge now. Okay? He wants to understand. I don't think that we've ever actually gotten confirmation of that before, that he wants to understand Hannibal now. Even before, when he was working for Jack, it was because he knew that it was the right thing to do, not that he wanted to do it. And the conversation shifts to how Will can never go back to who he was before he met Hannibal, which is the sad truth of things, and is also very romantically coded, because often when we meet that one person in our life that we want to spend the rest of our lives with, it is kind of difficult to, like, know what your life was like before you even met that person.
Before you and after you. Yours. It's all starting to blur.
And Will also states one of the most crucial lines here: "You and I have begun to blur."
You and I have begun to blur.
Which he himself is starting to be unable to tell where Hannibal ends and Will begins. Again, with that soulmate speak, like, they're two halves of one whole. And it's also how Will was able to find him to begin with, because he claims that every crime Hannibal makes feels like one that he is guilty of now, which, that's a terrifying thing. And just the language here, the language is so beautiful. It is so expertly written. And Will says that he's curious if either one of them would be able to survive separation, which I also think is a fascinating point to make, because Fuller has written it to the point where their whole lives, their whole plot points, they center around each other now. Trying to separate them could be equivalent to character assassination, just like what we see with Will and Mike in Stranger Things.
I'm curious whether either of us can survive separation.
Like, that is what happens when you interweave two characters to the point where they are so intricately connected. If you try and separate that, it can be catastrophic. And, like, with these two, like, their plot points literally require the presence of one another to hold much narrative weight, because, like, what would happen if they did try to sever? Hannibal eventually gets up and basically asks if Will is coming with him, which Will seems to agree to follow, and it's clear from this entire conversation how much they missed each other, but also how almost toxic this missing is. It's like a phantom limb syndrome. It's kind of messing with the lines between codependency and a healthy miss because they don't feel whole unless they are with one another. And I'm sorry, but there's no platonic way to see that, okay? But as I have told you time and time again, good things rarely ever last long, and as they are walking away from the gallery, Chio is standing atop of a building, and because she's intent on protecting her cousin, and she sees Will start to pull out a knife as they're out on the street, and she immediately shoots him in the shoulder. And Hannibal, ever the caring husband, picks Will up and takes him home to clean him up. But that is not all that he does. Of course not. So Hannibal takes the cleanup a step further, however, because he drugs him and then straps him to a dining room chair. It is then revealed that Hannibal also knows that Jack has made it to Europe to find both of them, and after using Will as bait to lure him in, Hannibal then attacks Jack and seats him across from Will at the dinner table in a disturbing comparison to how they used to have dinners together in season 1. And Hannibal then takes a saw and starts trying to drill into Will's skull so that he can eat his brain. Yeah, because his brain has always been the most fascinating aspect of him for Hannibal, and maybe he thinks that it's the whole you are what you eat. Thankfully, police officers storm in before this plan can go too far, but again, good things never last long, and they're actually secretly bribed by the Verger family to take Will and Hannibal to Mason. They are brought back to Mason, hung upside down beside one another like pigs for the slaughter in the back of a truck. And Mason's plans for the two of them are about as disgusting as you can imagine they'd be. So honestly, sometimes I'm surprised that Brian Fuller didn't come up with the human centipede. The amount of stuff that this man comes up with in his noggin. Oh my god. Mason wants to eat Hannibal gradually while he's still alive, and he also wants to get a face transplant from Will so that he can eat Hannibal while wearing Will's face. This was a show that was on NBC. I honestly, I think that therapy was a little bit of a waste on this man. But also, there's been another development because Alana and Margot have developed a romantic relationship with each other that to me kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Because, all that I remember is they had maybe, 2 scenes together, and then all of a sudden we were getting, kiss scenes and, intimate scenes. And granted, it may just be that I'm upset that they got to kiss, but Hannigram for some reason didn't. But anyway, there's also a scene where Will bites off a chunk of someone's face because I think it was one of Mason's goons was trying to do something to him, and Hannibal looks very proud of him in that instance. But thankfully, none of these plans work, and Alana and Margot are able to tag team it to help free Hannibal so that they can all take some of Mason's sperm and kill him because he also had a live human baby being grown inside of a pig, which was also very fucked up. So, and this is how we got to know the murder wives, who are the parallel to the murder husbands, because they did kill Mason. Hannibal winds up whisking Will away and carries his unconscious body bridal style back to Will's home. And when Will wakes up, we see Hannibal sitting very calmly by his bedside, and this is when we get another unofficial breakup scene. For a relationship that is very difficult to define in the first place, they seem to have a lot of breakup scenes. And the music is once again very, very gentle and melancholic, and you once again find yourself being torn on whether or not this is a good thing or not. Because Will is trying to sever their connection, just like he had said before. But that doesn't make it hurt any less, if you know what I mean. Because Will basically tells him that the teacup, which is in reference to their relationship, is broken and that it will never gather itself back together again, or at least not the way that Hannibal wants it to.
It's never going to gather itself back together again.
Not even in your mind?
Hannibal seems to know what he's referencing here when he is asking, like, not even in your mind, which is implying that not even in Will's own imagination, like not even in his fantasies, there isn't even a possibility that they could be together, that they could do this. And it's a very heavy conversation, so I will do my best to break it down for you. Will basically tells him that when it comes to the two of them, there can be no decisive victory or victor. Like not even when Hannibal tells him that he was victorious, meaning that like there can be no winner between the two of them. Like even if Will does turn Hannibal into the police, he will still have to deal with the fallout and the consequences and like the missing chunk of him, because the fact of the matter is that they have changed each other. They have changed each other to the point of no return. And Will admits to missing his dogs, and he tells Hannibal that he will not miss him. So symbolism here.
I miss my dogs. I'm not gonna miss you.
I mean, I'm sure that he does miss his dogs, but what Will means when he says that he misses his dogs is he's saying he misses the man that he used to be, the man that he was before he met Hannibal. And he is trying to convince himself that he won't miss who he is now. He won't miss Hannibal, who he is with Hannibal. And this is when Will upright tells him that he is not going to keep looking for Hannibal anymore and tells him to leave.
I'm not gonna find you. I'm not going to look for you. I don't want to know where you are or what you do. I don't want to think about you anymore.
He doesn't want any part of him anymore. Like it's literally a breakup. Like copy and paste it into any romance novel. This is a literal breakup. He tells him that he doesn't want to know what he does or where he is, just like asking your partner to take their stuff and get out. Deleting his texts, deleting his photos, trying to erase his memory, trying to erase him off of Will. And this does seem to hurt Hannibal, and he even calls him out, saying that like he delights in the wickedness and then pains himself for delighting in it.
You delight in wickedness and then berate yourself for the delight.
You delight. I tolerate.
Because Will does enjoy doing bad things with Hannibal, but like then of course the moral dilemma comes in where he's like, but I shouldn't enjoy doing this. And Will tells him, you delight. I tolerate, which we have now come to see is not exactly the truth. Yes, Balto. Hi. Would you like to participate? And he tells Hannibal that he doesn't have his appetite, which we can also argue is not true. And then he tells him goodbye. And we can see that Hannibal seems to be struggling with something, but he doesn't say anything more. In fact, he does actually leave. He gets up and pretends to leave, and then later on, when Jack arrives with the FBI to find Hannibal, Hannibal reveals himself. He never left. He was waiting for them to show up. And what is so fascinating to me here is that like you would think that Hannibal's downfall would be something outrageous. It would be a whole spectacle, right? Like it would be a bloodbath. You would have to drag him kicking and screaming into that cell before he would sacrifice his freedom. But like, cause like this is a narcissist that we're talking about, but instead like he gives himself up willingly, and he kneels in the snow, having officially been iced out by Will. And It's interesting because like this whole scene is painted out in such a melancholic light. Like the music is sad, like it's snowing. It's such a quiet scene. And it's like we're meant to feel sad about this. Like we're meant to feel sad over this break because it's not victorious. And he doesn't fight back, not in the slightest. Like he literally says that he is okay with being caught because, as Will later confirms, and as he kind of says in the moment, he wants Will to know exactly where to find him when he will inevitably need to. And Hannibal has always been 2 steps ahead. And even now, it seems that he knew that they were not going to survive this separation. But he was willing to let Will try. And as he turns his gaze back up to Will, the man literally says nothing before he turns around and goes back into his house. We then get a time skip where Hannibal has been in the BHCI for about 3 years, and Will has officially left the FBI and is now living with his new wife Molly and his stepson. So it is kind of following the Red Dragon thing. He is playing house. As Hannibal said that one time in that one fan fiction, and is trying to be the Mike Wheeler version of normal. And Jack approaches him one day, because of course he does, because there is a new killer that he needs his help profiling, and Will does reluctantly return. And he quickly finds out that he is out of his element and finds himself wanting to speak to Hannibal in order to revert back to the old mindset that he used to be in. He has also been starting therapy with Bedelia, since she was also close to Hannibal before he got arrested, and it is during one of those therapy sessions where he explicitly asks, like, outright, is Hannibal in love with me? And Bedelia basically says that, why, yes, he is, and implies that Will is likely in love with Hannibal too and wants to return to him. So,
Is Hannibal in love with me?
Could he daily feel a stab of hunger for you and find nourishment at the very sight of you? Yes. But do you ache for him?
how's that for psychoanalyzing? We also get like such catty shit, like, is your wife aware of how intimately you and Hannibal know each other? Like, she was born straight out of the Real Housewives, wasn't she? And it's also worth noting that Will does seem like he's about to cry during, like, when he was asking that question, because it's also just his and Bedelia's dynamic is also interesting because they've both been burned by the same flame, and half the time Bedelia's coming across as being like almost jealous. But basically, when Will reunites with Hannibal, it becomes clear that he is very unhappy with the new development of Will having a wife and child. And he doesn't help very much in the way of the case, but he does what he normally does and ruins everything by getting in contact with Francis Dolarhyde, who is the Red Dragon, and tries to get him to kill Will's entire family. He doesn't succeed, but he does come close to it because they do get injured. And it's interesting because when talking about it, Will specifically speaks about his stepson as that boy or that kid. Like he didn't refer to him as like my stepson or like my son or anything. And that language, it was very telling to me the first time that I watched it, because it sounds like he's distancing himself from this family, which is only making that claim about him playing house all the more relevant. Like, he's already distancing himself from them because he doesn't see them as his real family. He sees them as a charade. Because he knows what's happening, and Hannibal admits to Will that it was him who sent Francis, and Will is naturally upset about this and consults with Alana and Jack to discover that they can use this connection between Hannibal and Francis in order to capture him. And Will offers a plan that they should fake Hannibal being transferred to a different facility in order to catch Francis out in the open. And while Jack does agree, he also forms another secret plan with Will that will make it so that neither of them survive. So neither Hannibal nor Francis will survive. And we get this beautiful scene here. It's one of my favorite scenes, honestly, where Will is trying to convince Hannibal to help them with the plan. And he is so blatantly flirting. Like,
I need you, Hannibal.
Ding dong, the dragon is not dead.
He literally has this man wrapped around his finger. Make no mistake. And Hannibal is evidently still pissed with him, but he does seem happy to see him. Like, underneath all those layers, he is happy to see him and is basically taunting how Will has to come back even after he had, like, said goodbye. And Will, for once, does agree with him. He tells him the basic plan, which Hannibal rightly points out sounds flimsy, even to Will himself. And it's also integral to note that Will is making intense eye contact here. Like, never once shying away from him. And in fact, like, he seems almost playful, literally admitting, I need you, Hannibal. Admitting to the one thing and appealing to the ego that we know is Hannibal's main weakness. And is also just his main desire is for the object of his affection to want and need him again. And he even tells Hannibal that he is his best shot, and for the final blow, final XP, he leans in and whispers, please.
You're our best shot, Hannibal. Please.
The entire scene is just fueled with so much purpose and tension. Like, it's showing us that even after all these years, their dynamic and their bond is still, it is deeper than the deep end of the kiddie pool, okay? And Will knows exactly how to get Hannibal to do his bidding, and honestly, just seems to be having fun being around him again. And because of, like I said, make no mistake, Hannibal is just as happy, if not more so, to be there and to have this attention on him, have his ego stroked. And because, again, he could never entirely predict Will, now could he? But of course, the fake transfer doesn't quite go to plan, and Francis winds up murdering everyone in the caravan except for Will and Hannibal. And he doesn't even speak to them as he drives away, but we do get the funny scene where Hannibal casually just chucks a dead policeman out of the cop car and tells an anxious and distressed Will that he'd be so much comfortable with himself if he just relaxed. Yeah, okay, let me do that. He then drives over and peers through the window at him, asking if Will is heading his way. He is giving Will an opening here, like an olive branch, and Will does wind up taking it, and they go to Hannibal's secret house, which evidently is not a very good secret house, because Francis finds them pretty damn quickly. And he shoots Hannibal through the window while the two of them were drinking wine and having a very much not romantic conversation. Like, no, absolutely not. And as Hannibal is bleeding out on the floor, Francis tells Will that he would be best to not try and run away. And Will doesn't. He instead chooses to just watch as Francis literally starts setting up a camera to film the death of Hannibal. And the ball is now in Will's court. Like, he can either allow this to happen, or he could either watch the only man who has ever understood him and made him do horrible things die, or he could help him. And he seems to come to the decision of the latter as Hannibal and Will make eye contact, which I'm so proud. We've come so far from the Will Graham who refused to make eye contact in season 1, and Will reaches for his gun. But Francis notices this, however, and stabs him, and a nasty fight ensues as everyone gets to take a turn being stabbed. And eventually, through working together, Hannibal does jump onto Francis's back as Will slices his gut open, and then Hannibal tears out a chunk of his neck, and together they kill the dragon. And both of them are now heavily injured, but Will mutters that what Hannibal had said was right, that blood really does look black in the moonlight. Hannibal helps him up and the two of them stand on the cliffside, and they're both holding on to each other for stability in this scene right here. And it's an embrace that never has been and never will be seen as platonic. And you can even go find the video, but there are literally cut alternate versions that literally say kiss alts on it. Okay. Because Mads and Hugh had wanted to kiss in that moment, but I believe Fuller thought that it was too much. So this is the final scene that we get between the two, and it does become abundantly clear who Will has chose. Because we started out with a boy who was terrified to get close to other people, shying away from physical contact, even eye contact, and being terrified of who he really is. But here, he's leaning into Hannibal, literally clutching his shoulder, and like they're caressing each other like animals would. And Hannibal tells him that this was all Hannibal ever wanted for him and for both of them.
This is all I ever wanted for you, Will. For both of us.
To kill together and embrace their true nature.
It's beautiful.
And they embrace a little bit longer before Will ultimately pushes them both off the cliff and into the water below, where it's a bit iffy and ambiguous on like if they survive or not, but we'll get there. But it does bring up a good question though. Like, can there really be a happy ending here? Because like Hannibal did allow him, that he allowed himself to fall willingly, because, you know, now Will is finally he accepted who he was. Their character arcs have come to their full circle. But can there really be a happy ending? And if so, what's your definition of a happy ending? Is it Will and Hannibal running away to Cuba? Is it them becoming the official murder husbands? Or is it them running away and then electing to never kill again? Because that seems a little far-fetched. Or is it both of them dying? Because happy ending is a very subjective term. Like you have the Disney happy endings or you have the Stranger Things happy end where childhood magic dies and where you choose a life of conformity over risk. Any ending with Hannibal can only be one with consumption, is the thing. And I think that Will knew that. And I think that that's why he threw them overboard. And if they survived, they survived. And that was just what fate wanted. But if they died, then maybe in his mind, the world would be better off without them. But if you do sit through the credits, you do get to the post-credits scene that shows Bedelia sitting at her dining table, and the camera slowly zooms out to showcase an entire leg that is beautifully prepared, looking similarly to a stuffed pig. We are then shown that it is her leg that has been cut off and prepared for her and seemingly two other people. And this is quite difficult for her to accept, especially since she had been so damn confident before that Hannibal wasn't going to get her. He wasn't going to eat her. No, he wasn't gonna kill her.
You look so good. You couldn't ever eat me. You couldn't even dream of eating me. You couldn't handle the taste that I have in my gob.
But Bedelia is shown to be visibly scared now because, you know, that she's been knocked off her high horse now. There's a new wife here. Just kidding. His name is Will and he is his husband, excuse you. And we can see like at least two other empty chairs and plates on the table, and Brian Fuller did later confirm that this was all Hannibal's doing, because honestly, who else would it be? And that's basically confirming that Will and Hannibal did survive the fall, and it was setting up for a season 4. And with that, that is the end of the TV show Hannibal. So, now that all of that is said and done, we are still presented with that one intrinsic question: is Hannigram canon? Yes, Technically. If you still don't believe me after all of this, there are also multiple other video sources and topics that you could look into, such as the Are They Gay video that covered some topics I'm pretty sure that I didn't cover too. There's also just a bunch of symbolism with the songs that are being chosen, like literally the song Love Crime plays in the finale when they are about to fall off the cliff. Like, it is very hard to deny evidence that is so upfront, but then again, we also had that case with Byler, and look how that played out. There's also an entire Reddit and Tumblr post that is detailing a bunch of like behind the scenes posts and stuff, about Hannigram being canon and stuff that the cast members have said and that Brian Fuller has said. Which also, not to mention, like all of the times that Mads has literally admitted to Hannibal being in love with Will. So, like, in my mind, when I think about them being canon, we already know that Hannibal is in love with Will, okay? What I'm asking is, like, does Will reciprocate that love? Like, to me, that is what them being canon would mean, is that Will reciprocates it. Which I think Hugh Dancy was kind of iffy on for a while. Not entirely sure on that, but either way. But Brian Fuller did admit that while Clarice had seemed to submit to the romance, had never seemed to submit to the romance, that Will was on a slippery slope straight from the beginning. And I'll make sure to link that Reddit post in the description too, in case you're curious. But there are also multiple articles that were discussing how Hugh and Mads had wanted to do a kiss scene on the cliff, but Fuller had said that while he loved it, he had claimed that it was too much and it was too obvious. And a big claim that I do often see in these interviews is that, like, they never wanted this to be a physical romantic relationship. At least that's the vibe that I'm getting. They didn't want it to be physical, which is an interesting thing to me, because no, while I absolutely do not think that you always need to have an aspect of physicality in a romantic relationship in media. But I do think that it did, in a way, kind of form a double standard. Because Alana and Margot are also a queer couple in the show who also commit murder. And granted, Mason was a horrible person, but like they are literally meant to be a direct parallel to Will and Hannibal. And yet, they are allowed to have the physical relationship that Hannibal and Will are not. Is it because they're women? Is it because they're not the primary relationship, the primary focus? Like, these are the questions that I ask. Because, like, they have a ton of intimate scenes together. And so, for following the logic of not wanting the relationship to be physical because it was always bigger than that, then is that implying that Alana and Margot's relationship is somehow lesser than Hannibal and Will's? Like, do you see what I'm saying? It feels like a double standard is being formed here. Because it's just interesting to me where certain people want to draw the line. And, like, we can have two girls kiss, but we can't have two boys kiss, even when the actors want to and are willing to do it. And while it is great that we did get confirmation of their romantic relationship, like, it did also in a way open up some more potential avenues for queer baiting, like for people to see how far they can take this relationship and toy with it and toy with the idea of representation without ever actually daring to cross the line. I do love Hannigram deeply, but I do still feel a bit conflicted over the representation of it in the show, especially when we're comparing it to Alana and Margot. Because on one hand, it is amazing that we do have queer representation in a mainstream show, but it does kind of suck that a lot of people didn't really seem to be aware of it. And so I guess like it does eventually lead us to the question of what exactly are we looking for when it comes to queer representation in media? And I do think that the answer changes depending on who you ask. But at the very least, I do think that this is a relationship that was handled leagues better than Byler or Sherlock and Watson or other queer couples that were severe cases of queer baiting was handled. I do think that they handled it in a better way. No, it was not perfect, but like it was a lot better. And it also did help that Brian Fuller and the cast members did seem to actually be willing to talk about it, unlike the Duffer Brothers. And I did want to mention that Fuller did write it to be ambiguous on purpose, because I do believe that he had wanted to make a season 4. And there were some mentions of perhaps that season 4 exploring where Hannibal and Will ended up together after they officially ran away, like their life in Cuba or that sort of thing, because a lot of people explored that avenue in fan fiction. And it seems like the main reason why there's been a delay for any potential of season 4 is actually because of intellectual property rights. Because there have been some efforts on the original author to unify the rights, as well as a woman had passed away too, who also held a portion of the rights, which it just makes it really complicated to continue building off of something if you no longer to continue building off of something that is based off of like someone else's original source material. But the cast has also been very vocal about their willingness to continue, despite like their increasing ages and stuff. And I do think that there were some rumors about it potentially focusing on the Silence of the Lambs plotline, were it to ever get created. And like honestly, I am also a little bit conflicted on this too, because while I would like to see them again, I do kind of like how it ended, because it's technically an open ending, but it does still answer most of your questions, even down to if they survived or not, because technically, yes, they did. And it's not the clusterfuck of the Stranger Things open ending, but rather one that feels cohesive and believable to an extent. And it does open up dozens of avenues for people to kind of just imagine them in whatever ending they see fit. Overall, I dearly hope that the murder husbands are off in Cuba somewhere and are happier than ever. So with all that being said, if you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope that I taught you something today, and if you are interested in hearing more from me, a lot of what I plan to be doing going forward is doing other analyses of queer relationships throughout media, as well as cases of queerbaiting. And I'm also working on a massive Stranger Things rewrite in the background, so that will eventually come out. But if you want to hear more from me, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and even consider joining my Patreon, which a huge thank you to all of the people who have joined the Writer's Room Vicious Edition. I love each and every last one of you, and hearing from all of you on there has just been the highlight of my weeks. It has been so stressful out here for me lately, so I really do appreciate all the love and support and patience that you guys are giving me. I know that this video took me a while to make, but I honestly really did just want to spend as much time on it as I could to make it good. Especially since this is the first video that I'm making that is stepping away from Stranger Things. And next video will likely be another queer analysis. I just will have to see which one it's going to be analyzing. But I hope that I will see you there. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and as always, keep creating. I love all of you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.